Hello, everyone, and welcome to our artistic journey with pen and watercolor. So in this kit, I've included this practice watercolor sheet just to kind of help build our confidence in these materials. The only thing not included in the kit that we're going to need is a cup of water. So I just have an old cup here that I filled with a little bit of water. And then I always like to have either some paper towel or tissue nearby too, just in case I need it. But these particular paints, this is a beginner set. It's very washable. There's definitely higher end sets of watercolor paints. If you're looking for a little more precision, these beginner sets do tend to be a little more runny, a little more flowy, which I think is kind of fun and I think will work well for what we're doing today. So our first activity we're going to do today is practicing getting this paint to look lighter or darker depending on how much water we use. So the less water, the more mixing, the darker your paint is going to look. The more water, the lighter it's going to get. Now you can start at either end here. You can start at the light and build your way up to dark. I like to start at the dark end. So I'm going to start by just getting a very, very small amount of water on my brush here. And I think I'm going to use the color blue for this activity. You can use any color. I recommend it be one of the darker colors, a blue, purple, dark green, red, black. Those will work a little bit better. And then in this dark box, I'm going to see just how dark I can get that paint. Fill in the whole box. You don't have to fill in the whole box. Again, this is just to see what these paints are capable of here. And then in the box next to it, I'm going to see if I can get this blue to be just a shade lighter. So this is where I'm going to want to add a little bit more water to see if I can get it just a tiny bit lighter. Kind of more of a medium blue. So I'm not using a different blue, the lighter blue in the tray. I'm using the same blue, just adding a little bit more water. In the box next to it, let's see, a little bit more water. Get this blue even lighter. And what you'll start to notice is the more water you use, the more kind of runny and flowy the paint gets too. It's a little harder to control, has a little bit more of a mind of its own. That's watercolor paint. Let's see if we can get it even lighter in this box, even more water. And then in that light box, I want to go really light, almost like an off-white blue there. And so this is our goal here. Shades darker all the way across. Now once we've finished with that, the next activity is try to do the same thing with the same color, but instead of having these little boxes, we're going to see if we can get this nice smooth transition. So some people like to start at the light end. I kind of think it's a little easier to start at the dark end though, but personal preference. So using the same blue, I'm going to get that dark again. And again, when it's less water, more mixing, it's a thicker paint, it's a little easier to control. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dip my brush in water. I'm not going to dip it in the paint again. And I'm going to kind of drag it. And I'm going to keep doing that, just dipping in the water and kind of dragging it. And the more water and the more I drag, the lighter that blue is going to get. I really like this technique for backgrounds. I like it darker, closer to the object, and lighter the further away from the object I get. And that's what we call a value scale. Different lightnesses and darknesses of the same color, different values. For our next activity, we're going to try a few techniques here Got 3 boxes here. Definitely not the only 3 watercolor techniques, but they're fun ones to start out with as a beginner. This first technique is called wet on wet. For this technique, what I'm going to do is using my water, I'm going to get this box wet. Then I'm going to mix up kind of a wet paint here. It doesn't matter which color. Maybe I'll use purple. Using a lot of water in there so it's nice and wet. And see what happens when I just drop it onto that wet paper. Fun, right? Look at how it just spreads out. So this is another technique that I have a lot of fun with, especially in backgrounds too. Lots of fun. So for this next technique, wet on dry, I'm going to have a really wet paint, but paper's not going to be wet. Just learning what this paint does with different amounts of water and different amounts of water on the paper. This last technique is called dry brush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my brush a little drier. First, I do need some color here. Brush a little drier. And then with just a little bit of paint on that brush. So it's a nice kind of dry brush. See how that looks on some dry paper. Dry brush, dry paper. So again, these are definitely not the only 3 watercolor techniques, but nice ones to start with. There's also some more room on this page here, so I encourage you to kind of play and explore, see what else you can do with watercolor paints. Blending colors is also something I like to play around with here. Like what happens if I have some red and blend it with another color, like yellow. I'm getting some in-between colors. You can also use the leftover space on this paper to kind of experiment with the pen, see some different techniques you can do with the pen. So this paper, the rest of this paper is yours to explore, practice, have fun, and just build that confidence